And so I think most people probably don't understand this or realize this, and maybe they're scared of using Bitcoin because it's insecure, but actually it is more secure than a credit card.
Yeah, it definitely is, but of course in Bitcoin as well, there's a matter of like personal security. So you can like very securely have your Bitcoins on your own computer, have a wallet on your own computer. The problem is you do need to understand how to make a secure wallet.
Right.
Most people don't really pay attention to viruses and stuff that much. And that's pretty important in Bitcoin. And that's why there are so many companies like CoinMotion which offer like security but no hassle. So you don't need to know anything. You can just store it there and we'll take care of it for you. And
right,
I'm pretty awesome. Sure we're doing it better than most people. So.
And then you'll just make sure that my Bitcoins are never stolen.
Yeah.
You're like a Bitcoin bank.
Not officially.
Right. So if you are holding my Bitcoins on CoinMotion and you're also holding all of your customers' Bitcoins, doesn't that make you a centralized authority and put all of our Bitcoins at risk?
Well, there's a few ways to look at that. And so you can have two different kinds of Bitcoin services, basically. One creates an actual wallet for all their customers and keeps the money on the blockchain, and the other one pulls them together. The benefit of having an off-chain wallet is that the company can use cold storage, which means take all those Bitcoins or most of their Bitcoins offline. Like we have our Bitcoins stored in bank vaults in Finland, and that means that they're impossible to steal. But that also means that they're not instantly accessible all the time.
Well, unless someone robs the bank.
Unless someone robs 3 banks, yeah.
Right.
Which would be pretty cool, kind of. Not for our customers.
It won't happen. The banks won't get robbed.
But I mean, it would be an event in history. The first physical Bitcoin theft from banks. Anyway, so on the
where are your banks located again? We could have them try to steal it.
Yeah, well, well, they're in.
It's secret. It's confidential.
It's very confidential. Yeah. Yes, in Finland.
Right.
I'm just gonna say stuff. Anyway, so when you're off blockchain, you can like ensure security. Every time you're on blockchain, it means that either the company or the user, depending on how it's built, can be hacked potentially because they're usable. You can transact with them if you get a hold of their details. If they're offline, they're not usable in any way, and they're like perfectly safe. And so there's pros and cons to both. But that's the reason why a lot of companies like Circle, Coinbase use the cold storage method. It's just the safest way to do it right now.
Right. Most of these companies are putting even over 90% of the Bitcoins they're holding into cold storage too.
Yeah. We hold about 95% of our customer funds in cold storage.
Right. So if you got hacked and CoinMotion got hacked, the most that could be stolen would be 5%.
The most could be stolen right now would be 5%. It's constantly decreasing the amount we hold online, and we do make sure that we'll always have enough cash to refund whatever could be stolen. But it's more of a security measure. There's not much risk of it being stolen.
Right. I mean, it sounds pretty safe. Like someone could hack, my computer, get my credit card information, and then they could spend a lot. Whereas if they hack you, it doesn't sound like I would lose that much of my Bitcoins, which is pretty nice. Yeah,
and that's the reason to be off-chain. Then there's the companies that are on-chain, where you can actively check your balance from the blockchain, do stuff like that, which is really nice. But I think before we started seeing multi-signature wallets, we didn't really have a way of ensuring security for that kind of service. And so most of the companies or services that have been hacked or robbed have not been using cold storage. Or they have, but they haven't been secure enough online And I think multi-signature for the first time is making it possible to have your Bitcoins online, get the benefits of Bitcoin while still maintaining security.
Right. I mean, in multi-sig or multi-signature transactions, right, it's basically enabling multiple parties to have to confirm before the transactions can be sent.
Yeah.
And so we didn't even have this before, right? This is kind of a new thing.
I think there's multi-sig has been around in some form or another. I think it's currently becoming usable enough to actually make an effect on the industry. But it's not a new idea. It's just now we're starting to figure out how to implement it effectively.
Right.
And as you said, yeah, it requires more than one party. That's kind of the definition to authorize a transaction.
Right. And so you have, so in CoinMotion, 5% of the coins are not in cold storage.
Yeah.
But you also have multi-sig with those 5%.
No.
So is that something that you're working on? So
yeah.
Okay, because then at that point, if people, obviously they're not going to get the 95% of coins because those are in a bank, so they'd have to actually get guns in a tank and go rob a bank. And currently, they theoretically could hack the 5%, but once you have multi-sig set up, which kind of all the Bitcoin companies are doing right now, they would also have to kidnap me to get my, password or key?
Yeah. So we're rolling out a new version, and actually we won't be using cold storage in the same way. We'll be using multi-signature wallets, so your whole balance will be online all the time, and it'll be so your password will encrypt one of the private keys. And so every time there's a transaction, it needs our system to OK it and you to OK it.
Right.
Which means if somebody hacks us, they can't move the coins. And if someone hacks you, the most they could do is just move your coins, but right. not everybody's coins. Yeah. And generally, just because of two-factor authentication, stuff like that, if you use those very simple, very effective safety measures, it should be next to impossible to take anyone's coins. And that's, I think, the really exciting thing, because for the first time we'll have, you'll be able to check your monies on the blockchain, which is inherently a big part of Bitcoin. And then also, so you'll be able to check your monies on the blockchain, and so this fractional reserve stuff won't happen. Where we won't be operating with less money than what our customers have, which is the worry in a lot of companies, empty gogs.
Right. So can I, right now, if I have 100 Bitcoins on CoinMotion, can I actually go verify on the blockchain that those 100 Bitcoins are at CoinMotion?
No.
Can I verify with you?
Theoretically.
But, right.
It's a matter of
But that would be nice.
To verify, it would more just be you trusting us, because we have a whole bunch of Bitcoins. So how do you know if that's your 100 we're showing you?
Right. So do you have a plan to make it so that I could actually verify my 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
So with the multi-signature we're rolling out, you will be able to check the blockchain to see that you have exactly the amount you should have.
Right. Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because, that's what happened with Mt. Gox, right? They said that they had, $400 million worth of Bitcoin, and people tried to pull their Bitcoin out, and it turned out that Mt. Gox had been hacked, and someone had slowly taken most of this capital, and we didn't have any way to verify whether or not our capital was actually in there.
Yeah, and this auditing thing is a big trust builder as well, because currently the way Bitcoin companies are audited, or audited, I would say, is they make, for example, Bitstamp makes one big transfer of their whole holdings,
right?
And then you can see that on the blockchain, which is great, because then you know that they have a lot of money or whatever.
But how do we know how much they're supposed to have?
Exactly. We don't know how much they should have, so it's not a very effective way of auditing in the end. And then there's this practice of having a neutral party come in and look through your records and whatever.
Neutral party?
I don't know, but a neutral party, whoever that may be. Usually they're significant figures in the Bitcoin space,
right?
Generally trusted by the community, but even that, it's not the same as having people be able to check the blockchain and be like, this is my money.
Right. Like and that's, even if I went and checked like Wells Fargo to see if I had my money in there, that doesn't actually even mean anything.
No.
Because that's just a website telling me a number.
Yeah.
Which it could tell me whatever it wanted, and it doesn't mean that's how many dollars I actually have. Whereas Bitcoin's pretty awesome because once you have this set up, I actually could go verify on the blockchain, which you can't manipulate and I can't manipulate, and it's just completely trusted.
Yeah.
And I could go verify that I actually had that many coins, and that's totally new thing. No one's ever had that before.
Yeah, and then there's also the benefit of being able to use your whole balance whenever you want, which with the cold storage method is impossible.
Right. Plus, even with banks, you have spending limits.
Yeah, and the spending limits are more for your own safety, and so it's not so much that there's a limit in their system. It's just that they want to limit it somehow so that if your stuff does get stolen, which is surprisingly easy nowadays, people can't just use like 1 million of your euros or whatever.
Right. Or dollars in my case.
Oh, yes.
So if I was someone that I have some Bitcoin, but I may not totally understand everything about Bitcoin, would you recommend that a person like that tries to store their Bitcoin themselves or uses, someone like CoinMotion to kind of handle that and put it into cold storage and, make sure they're using multi-sig and protecting it?
I would definitely not suggest storing them yourself. It's if that whole thing is of interest, then definitely explore it, try out some wallets, but to start off with, use a trusted service like CoinMotion, like any of the other bigger companies. They're generally pretty good, and they're often insured as well. So there's not much worry there. When you store it with yourself, you do need to learn a little bit. There's a bit of a learning curve, and then additionally, the personal computers are probably the easiest to hack or break into.
So basically, if you're going to experiment with it, do it with a really tiny amount. Yeah,
exactly. And it's interesting and it's fun to play around with it, but just make sure it's not a lot of money.
Right.
And then generally, the services like CoinMotion are much easier to take your first step in because it's just made so simple. It's just buying and selling, and there's none of the hassle that's kind of involved with Bitcoin usually.
Right. And I think that's something that most people don't realize is that Bitcoin is really technical and really complicated, but at the same time, so is programming and a lot of other things in the world. And so most people will probably never need to understand everything about Bitcoin, and they'll just rely on you or someone like you, someone like CoinMotion to kind of understand how Bitcoin works and kind of take care of that for them and just make it super easy.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the traditional banking system isn't super easy either. You need these long-ass account numbers to make transfers. You need BIC codes. You need reference numbers, all this stuff, which is at this point in time, they still haven't figured out how I can just send money to anyone in the world if they have a bank account. It's just without going through that whole hassle.
Yep.
That's what Bitcoin does. And I think there is a learning curve to Bitcoin, but in the end, it's not at its most difficult. It's still not that difficult. So I think it's definitely something that everyone can get.
Well, especially on CoinMotion though, right? Because I can go to CoinMotion, I can buy a Bitcoin, and then you can hold it for me.
Yeah, it's that easy.
It's really
and
not
then
complicated.
If your friend wants you to send him some Bitcoin, he gives you an address, and then you send it to that address. It's
you actually have to get less information to send a Bitcoin than if you're going to send a wire.
Oh yeah, much
because a
less.
wire requires like three different pieces of information, I think.
But it doesn't, and there's no reason for that. I mean, like...
Well, they're just not as secure as Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, just leave it at that.
Yeah. So earlier you said that Bitcoin has no fees, but that's not completely true, right?
No. So yeah, I mentioned that like inherently Bitcoin has no fees. It does indeed have a miner's fee, which is right now it's a minuscule part, and it's not large enough to affect any like transactions, or it's not large enough to consider when making transactions.
So when you say miner's fee, what do you mean by that?
So when you make a transaction, and all these miners are basically verifying your transactions, and so they get a little reward for doing that as an incentive to use their processing power to verify the transactions. And it's currently really small. It's possible that it will go up as the difficulty increases. You need to give the miners more incentive, but also with Bitcoin's like adoption growing, Bitcoin's price should also go up, and then we should have a better correlation between them, even though there's no direct causality. And then there is the worry that the miner's fee will go up so high that it won't be like reasonable to transact in Bitcoin anymore. And I don't think that's really something anybody should fret about, because Bitcoin is kind of the first experiment right now. It's the biggest, it's the most impressive so far, and we're still learning. Like, Bitcoin is being developed. It's not set in stone. Stuff will change, and then hopefully at some point we'll figure out like the perfect system to make it work.
Which is pretty fascinating. Like, it's pretty crazy that someone that we don't know who they are.
Well, we do.
We don't.
The core devs, or you mean
no,
Satoshi?
But so the creator of Bitcoin from the beginning. Like, it almost sounds like a movie. Like some guy that goes by Satoshi Nakamoto, which sounds like some sort of samurai, made Bitcoin, and now we're kind of left here to like play with it. We're like we're in a giant experiment, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, but that's what you need. I mean, everything starts off as a giant experiment, especially if you're going to try and revolutionize an industry which has been relatively the same for like hundreds of years.
Yeah,
but. It's open source, so I don't think it's that worrying that we don't know who like invented it.
No, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, what other industry has a Satoshi Nakamoto in it?
Yeah,
like farmers don't have
how many mystical figures in the world are there generally? I mean,
there's like
he's
Jesus
up there.
and Satoshi. Yeah. Like, that's it.
That is pretty much it.
Yeah,
there's a couple more, but
I can't think of any important ones. So you are based in Europe.
Yeah.
And you're trying to enable Europe to get Bitcoins and sell Bitcoins really easily, right? So have you actually bought anything in Europe with Bitcoin? Like, what was the last thing you bought in Europe with Bitcoin?
I bought dinner at a restaurant in Helsinki.
How'd that go?
Great. Took about 30 seconds. And then I had some salmon and potatoes in front of me. It's fantastic.
There you go. Bitcoin. It can get you salmon and potato in Europe. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for helping with this course. I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot about Bitcoin.
Oh, definitely. And, if you have any more questions, I'm always available.
Awesome. All right. Bye, guys.